continue to talk about education because in our country, it's getting a failing grade. And the News on Merit Street is exploring why public education is headed down a dire path.
So, Lyndsay, you mentioned this number earlier, 55,000. That's how many teacher openings we have across the country right now. And they admit that number is most likely low. So this graph here shows the increase in the number of job openings in 2018. There were some shortages, but then it dipped back down below the employment baseline. But since the pandemic, the number of openings just keeps going up and up.
That's right. Florida has the most vacancies with more than 5,000 openings in just one state. Utah is faring the best with only a few dozen open positions. And 7 states don't even have numbers to report. And the teacher shortage isn't a new issue, but the problem is getting worse.
So we see what is happening. The question now is, why is this happening? Tonight, we're focusing on a big reason: money.
Maybe teachers wouldn't be so stressed if you could live without a roommate or, I don't know, afford groceries and gas. That'd be great.
Teachers are mad about money and they're sounding off on TikTok. And they're not lying. Nationally, the average teacher's salary is $68,000 a year.
So I thought I'd do my own pay transparency video as a 6-year teacher in Texas. So per paycheck, we get paid once a month. That makes my gross wages about just shy of $5,500. Then after all my deductions, which you can see below, my take home is around $4,300 a month.
They make 8% less than the average of all U.S. workers. And that gap is only getting worse. Back in 2018, it was just 3% less. And yes, it's true that teachers do get a pay raise every year. But when you adjust that for inflation, that's when it changes. One report from the Economic Policy Institute shows between 1996 and 2021, teachers got a bump in salary of just $29 per week. But this table from the National Center for Education Statistics paints a bleaker picture. It's showing that their wages are actually starting to get worse. This lack of competitive pay is having serious unintended consequences. It's harder for schools to recruit and retain teachers. And some schools are even lowering their standards. On top of the 55,000 jobs that need to be filled, there are 270,000 teachers working who are underqualified to be there.
Wow. And joining us now to discuss all this is Marlena Carter and Stacy Sawyer, both former teachers who left the profession. Marlena taught for 6 years and Stacy taught for more than 30 years. Thank you both for being here with us this evening and for your contributions to the profession.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Marlena, I'm going to start with you. Why did you want to become a teacher in the first place?
My youngest sister is 10 years younger than me. So when she started kindergarten, I was a junior in high school. And there was a program called Ready, Set, Teach, where I could go into elementary school one day a week to help be there because she was so nervous to get started and didn't want to be away from home. So I thought, what better way to be a servant in my community and get to spend some time with my youngest sister than to go and be at her school. And I ended up falling in love with it. I loved working with the kids. I loved being able to just help them in not only school, but outside of school emotional needs as well.
And I love what you said, a servant to the community, because that's what it is. Stacy, how about you? How did you want to become involved in this profession?
I started teaching after 30 years ago. I wanted to make a difference in kids' lives, and I taught inner city schools, so they already had tough lives as it was in the first place. And I wanted to make it fun for them. I wanted them to understand how much education, it was so important in their lives, and just to make it a fun thing, because a lot of them, they weren't having fun in school, but you can make it that way.
So Marlena, the amount that you were getting paid, how did that affect your role in deciding to leave teaching?
Honestly, it was never about the pay when I started as teaching. But due to the economy and the way that it has affected since COVID, I mean, there was new teachers that were coming in that were making more of a salary than I was as a 6-year teacher. And there wasn't a pay increase as there was for retention or retaining other teachers that were there longer than I was. So there was no incentive to stay as far as pay goes. But not only did you have to rely on your pay for what you needed at home, but there's so many resources that you have to pour in out of your own pocket for your classroom just to support the needs in your classroom. It's not sustainable in the long run.
You know, I hear this over and over again from teachers who literally have to put in their own money just to get the supplies for their classroom for their students. So, Stacy, you were a teacher for 30 years. That is an amazing commitment. How did your salary factor into your decision to finally leave the profession?
Well, I never did go into it for the money. I went into it because I love teaching. But after a while, you just start to feel undervalued. You try to make ends meet all the time. You have to have a second job just to make it through and to pay your rent. And it gets to you, especially when the districts just keep asking for more and more time and energy from you, mental energy, and it just gets to be too much to where it's like the money's just not worth it.
And Marlena, how about you? I mean, I hear this story, again, exactly what you and Stacey are saying. You didn't go into the profession because of the money. You went because the love of children, the love of what a teacher gets to do every day. But how many other teachers do you know who are leaving because of what you and Stacey are saying right now? You just felt underappreciated.
At my previous school, there was 7 teachers who have left this school year after I did. And most of them were mothers like myself. I had my daughter back in September, and I was told that I was going to be setting the precedent for other working moms that were coming back because they weren't going to provide coverage for me in order to continue to feed my daughter at home. And I couldn't make the choice between being able to support my own daughter and helping to raise other people's children. I felt like it wasn't a fair ask.
Stacey, you know, we saw a lot of teachers retire after COVID. What do you feel drove them to leave? And many left early, they retired early.
A lot of them did, including myself. You just get the mental anguish of all of it, and the stress of all of it, and then factor in it's giving you even more stress because you don't have the money that you need to survive. There's so many teachers here that have quit just because they're like, it's not worth it anymore. It's not, and it's because they have to have 2 jobs just to get by. I have knew some that even went to like a grocery store. We're working after school. You're so tired, and then you're having to go to another job. So it gets to the point where it's just too much.
Stacey and Marlena, one quick question before we go. What are you doing now that you've left teaching?
I'm currently an executive personal assistant, and I have the ability to stay home with my daughter and work remotely, and I don't have to make the choice between being able to feed my daughter and raising other people's children. As much as I loved working with them, my family comes first.
And Stacey?
I took my side hustle and opened Pineapple Picasso. It's an art studio in Cape Coral, Florida.
That's great. Marlena Carter and Stacey Sawyer, thank you both so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So is there a solution to this problem? Well, Mallory Dwinal-Palisch joins us now. She's the Chancellor at Reach University, which works to change the ways teachers are hired and trained. Chancellor, so thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So were you listening? You were able to listen to Marlena and Stacey as they were talking. What are your thoughts after hearing their stories?
It's heartbreaking. And unfortunately, the most heartbreaking thing about it is that it's common. Every year, we hear about tens of thousands of people like Marlena and Stacey who entered teaching because they love kids, they love their community, and they want to give back, making the choice that they have to leave.
And Chancellor, why don't you feel like teachers are getting paid more? What's at the root of this issue?
So the most frustrating thing for me is my former role as a school principal and seeing how we actually decide how payments work inside of our school system. It's not a question of if we can pay them more. It's a function of us choosing not to. And I think I didn't realize until I was a school principal, and I think most Americans don't realize how upside down our system is for deciding how we're going to pay schools. And the best way to think about it is to put it in terms of a different industry. Imagine if I ran a restaurant and people said, hey, there's about 1,000 people in your neighborhood, and so we're going to pay your waiters a certain amount, even if more people come in and want more food, even if the same people coming in want more food than they would have normally ordered, even if the orders are more complicated, we're not going to change what we're going to pay them. They just have to take care of it, and we've decided that's what's going to happen. No other industry would run that way, but that is how we run the industry that is the bedrock of American society.
It's such a great analogy to compare it to, and makes so much sense when you put it that way. Why hasn't this happened? But talk about what you're doing at Reach to help solve the teacher shortage.
Absolutely. Reach University is a response to my own frustrations, first as a new teacher and then as a school principal. And in a nutshell, we believe that teaching should be developed as a trade, and we don't think that trade is a dirty word, right? So in the average traditional program, I will go all the way through a 4-year college degree, take on a ton of student loan debt, leave the workforce, and hope after 10 weeks of student teaching at the end that I realize that this is something I want to do. In most states, you have to log 4 times as many hours to become a cosmetologist as you do to be a teacher in terms of on-the-job training. And we think that's insane. So Reach University is built on this assumption of, if we think on-the-job learning is important for people who are going to do our hair, it is equally important for the people who are going to raise and educate our children. So all Reach candidates start with a salary on day one, working in their building, usually as a paraprofessional or a classroom aide, getting credit for that work, getting trained by a mentor teacher, with the idea that at the end of 4 years, they know exactly what they're getting into, they've been well prepared, and they've been compensated throughout their entire training journey.
Wow, Chancellor, I love this out-of-the-box thinking. I think it's what it's going to take to come up with a solution for this issue. Thank you so much, Chancellor, for your time.